live in such a
If there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they want to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally, and no system can handle that. And so we're totally opposed on that. But we can't take it. We just can't do it. I'd love to do everybody. I'd love to do the whole world. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits. They want to open the wall again. Can you believe it? I can't even believe it. They want to open the wall. They haven't taken away boys playing in women's sports. They haven't done that. Men playing in women's sports. It's like they don't change. They lost an election in a landslide, and they don't change.
The House has passed a clean, nonpartisan, continuing resolution to fund the government until November the 21st. The President is ready to sign it. But Senate Democrats, they're standing in the way. This is ready to pass right now. This keeps the government open. This funds the government and protects federal workers and the American people from the hostage taking that has become, evidently, now the Democrat norm, even though it's something they decried not that many years ago. It's the Democrats' far-left base and far-left senators have demanded a showdown with the president. And the Democrat leaders have bowed to their demands. And apparently, the American people just have to suffer the consequences. And so Democrats have a choice to make. They can shut down the government and subject the American people to all the problems that come with the shutdown, many of which, as I said, they've enumerated in the countless quotes they've made in the past. Or they can join Republicans to pass a clean, nonpartisan, short-term funding bill and keep the government's lights on.
I thank the leader for letting me borrow his chart for a minute. So he's pointed to each of these bar graphs, percentage of Democratic senators who supported Biden era CRSs. Yes, that's true. Guess why? In each case, Democrats negotiated with Republicans and said, let's have a bipartisan bill. The leader says it's a clean bill. It's a partisan bill. Not once were Democrats asked for what input should be in the bill. We were not told about it. We were not asked about it, et cetera.
What we do all the time around here is witnessed by the chart that you're just using there.
We stand at the precipice of a government shutdown because Republicans are not serious about keeping the government open. Too many Republicans are lying through their teeth. They say, oh, the Democrats want undocumented immigrants to get health care, to get the federal dollars of health care. That is utter bull, and they know it. The law prohibits undocumented immigrants from getting payments from Medicare, Medicaid, or the ACA. There's no money, not a penny, of federal dollars that are going there. So why do they bring this up? Because they're afraid to talk about the real issue, which is health care for American citizens.
Mr. President, the same Washington politicians who were whining about DOGE laying off unnecessary bureaucrats just a few months ago are now exposing who is and who isn't an essential employee by forcing a government shutdown. In the past, non-essential employees were sent home and then eventually paid for not working during a shutdown. This is an absolute waste of taxpayer dollars. With Democrats blocking passage of the bill to keep the government open, thousands of non-essential employees could be furloughed indefinitely when funding expires tonight at midnight. Instead of paying these bureaucrats for not working, the Trump administration may eliminate many of these non-essential positions altogether. Of course, our brave men and women in uniform will continue answering the call to duty without pay if there is a shutdown, as will other essential employees. But you know who will still get paid? The politicians who failed to do their jobs and caused the shutdown, namely Senator Schumer and the Democrats in Congress. Keep in mind, the bill they are blocking would keep the government funded at Biden's budget levels, go figure, while continue working out our differences. Senator Schumer himself stated earlier this year, no reasonable member on either side, Democrat or Republican, wants a government shutdown. Both sides recognize that a government shutdown would mean crushing delays to veterans programs, nutrition programs for women, infants, and children, delayed benefits for our military, and so much more. Senator Schumer went on to say, only extremists who can't win an argument are willing to shut down the government, to bully everyone else into submission. And folks, that's exactly what is happening now. But ironically, it is Senator Schumer who is being bullied by the extremists within his own party. These are the radical socialists demanding we defund the police and ICE and allow our streets and borders to once again be overcome by chaos and lawlessness. Senator Schumer previously shut down the government for over a month in a failed attempt to stop President Trump from securing our southern border. During that time, food safety inspections were stopped, permanent damage was done to some of our national parks, scientific research was put on hold, applications for small business loans became backlogged, the low-income folks, the elderly, and people with disabilities lost rental assistance and were forced to live in fear of eviction. And 300,000 federal employees who went without a paycheck for over a month were eventually paid for doing nothing, costing taxpayers $3 billion. Folks, no one wins when Democrats shut down our government. It is obvious the Democratic leader is shutting down the government for one simple reason: to protect his own job. But that's not even working. Just last week, the Washington newspaper Politico reported that across the country, the Democratic base is rebelling against Schumer's, quote, rudderless leadership. Well, folks, that's a sentiment we all share. From the far left to the right, there is widespread disappointment with Senator Schumer's inability to perform his basic duties, like doing his part to make sure our military gets paid on time and the government stays open. So on behalf of all Americans, for his rudderless leadership, his petty partisanship, and his silly shutdown shenanigans, the recipient of the non-essential Government Employee of the Year for 2025 is Senator Chuck Schumer.
Mr. President, allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm the House Democratic leader. Our caucus is 217 members strong. We serve in a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for you, we work for the American people. We are fighting to lower the high cost of living and to protect the health care of everyday Americans. And Mr. President, the next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face. Say it to my face. House Democrats are here on duty, fighting on behalf of the American people, ready to fund the government in a way that lifts up their quality of life. House Democrats are on duty. House Republicans are on vacation. Amen. Shame on them. We're ready, we're willing, and able to find a bipartisan path forward to fund the government in a way that actually meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, and their economic well-being. But here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. Not now, not ever.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are only hours away from a government shutdown, and the Democrats have a very clear binary choice. They can choose to keep the government open by voting for a short-term, nonpartisan, clean, continuing resolution, 24 pages long, or they can vote to shut the government down. That's what we're looking at. They, as you all know, have voted during the time they had the majority 13 different times, and when Biden was in the White House, on short-term continuing resolutions, 13 different times. And so it begs the question is what's changed? And I think what's changed is President Trump is in the White House. That's what this is about. This is politics. And there isn't any substantive reason why there ought to be a government shutdown. This is something that has been done routinely, as I said, 13 different times when the Democrats had the majority. But we are not going to be held hostage for over $1 trillion in new spending on a continuing resolution, nor are we going to be held hostage to allow illegals to get free health care in a continuing resolution. These are things that they're demanding as part of their so-called negotiation. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't anything here to negotiate. This is a routine funding resolution to keep the government open so that we can continue our appropriations work and fund the government in the old-fashioned way, which is allowing the Appropriations Committee, Democrats and Republicans, to work together as they have been. And by the way, the Democrat leader keeps talking about not consulting. The Appropriations Committee, they picked the date. Democrats and Republicans, the big four on the Appropriations Committee, were consulting. They picked the date for the continuing resolution, November the 21st. And so this has been an open process from the very beginning. This year we opened up the appropriations process, something that wasn't done when the Democrats had the majority here in the Senate. But they have a clear choice in front of them today. And I hope there are Democrats out there. This may not represent the view of their leadership, but I'm hoping there are Democrats out there who are reasonable and understand what's at stake here. And as they have articulated many times in the past, the costs associated to the American people with the government shutdown. This is totally avoidable. It is a decision they're going to have to make, and if the government shuts down, it is on the Senate Democrats. The House has acted, the President's ready to sign the bill, and all that's left is for 8 Democrats to join us in passing that bill today.
And before I get into my substantive remarks, I just heard something that Trump said. Here's what he said. We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible and bad for them, and irreversible like cutting vast numbers of people out. Well, there it is. Trump admitted himself that he is using Americans as political pawns. He is admitting that he is doing the firing of people if, God forbid, it happens. He's using Americans as pawns, as I said. Democrats do not want a shutdown. We stand ready to work with Republicans to find a bipartisan compromise, and the ball's in their court. When he says he will do things, he is taking ownership. He is taking ownership. It's just like in his first term when he said he will own the shutdown. It's just a point I wanted to make. Okay, now, we're 10 hours away from government funding expiring simply because the Republicans are not serious about keeping it open. Finally, After months of asking, months, and mounting pressure, Leader Jeffries and I went to the White House yesterday to meet with the President and Republican leaders to find a way forward. And sitting in the room, it was very clear, behind closed doors, that the President hasn't fully grasped the magnitude of the disaster he's causing Americans. As costs continue to skyrocket for Americans, thanks to Trump's tariffs, economic policies, clean energy policies, and disastrous blunders, Americans are prepared to spend 114% more on their health insurance. That's right, that just came out. According to the Kaiser Families Foundation's analysis today, without ACA premium tax credits, premiums will double, more than double on average. And this not only affects those on ACA, it affects just about every American family with health insurance, because it is, as has been documented, when they get the deep cuts on ACA and on Medicaid, they don't have as much money, and they raise the costs on everybody else. So virtually no American with health insurance is immune from these disastrous Trump cuts. And what are Republicans doing about this? Avoiding lying. This week, look at this poster. This the one? Here. Let's get it front and center. I borrowed Thune's poster today, as many of you saw. This is what the House Republican Conference called. Lisa McClain, the head, walked members through polling and advised them not to make the message about health care, because ours lose that argument. That's not me. That's one of the Republican leaders who's in charge of messaging. They're right. She's right. Their position is so callous, and the damage is much greater than even people thought, that it's very unpopular. So when they're up against the brutal fact that Americans are to pay, take this one up, 114% more for marketplace enrollees who currently receive financial assistance. That's the Kaiser Foundation. It's devastating to them. And let me be clear, because they like to tell lies because they can't argue the merits. So they make up things. They said they're saying undocumented people cannot and will not receive premium tax credits. They say that undocumented people are going to get these credits. That is absolutely false. That is one of the big lies they tell, so they don't have to discuss the issues. The federal government, by law that we passed, does not fund health insurance for undocumented immigrants in Medicaid, period, nor the ACA, nor Medicare. Undocumented immigrants do not get federal health insurance premiums, period. Period. They're lying. I hope you'll call them on it when they bring it up. Some of the newspapers have. Okay? I said this directly to Speaker Johnson in the Oval Office. I told him what he was saying was bull, because he said, you guys want that. And he just smirked and didn't even answer it. And why are they lying? They know how unpopular their position is on health care, that they shouldn't talk about it. Republicans know perfectly well that undocumented immigrants are already prohibited, as I said, from getting insurance on ACA, Medicare, or Medicaid. They know perfectly well not a single sentence or clause or comma that we're pushing in our bill does that, but they're lying because they know they're screwed if this debate turns into one about health care. And guess what? That's just what we are doing. We are making this debate a debate on health care. If you want an indication of how serious Republicans are about keeping the government open, who wants the shutdown? There's no better proof than the fact that Speaker Johnson sent everybody home this week, ensuring a shutdown no matter what the Senate did. So don't argue who wants the shutdown. It's Johnson. And when we asked President Trump to meet with us, Hakeem and I, By all reports, it was Johnson who made him pull the meeting back. Pull the meeting back. And if you want another indication, and so, by the way, so the House Republicans should be here, but they're home. If you want another indication of how serious Republicans are about funding the government, look no further than the deepfake AI video the President tried to put up last night after our meeting, when we were actually trying to fund the government. His video was dumb, it was childish, it was petty. It's something that a 5-year-old would do, not a President of the United States, but it shows how unserious they are. They don't give a damn about the harm they will cause with their shutdown. Now, Republicans have until midnight to cut the garbage and get serious with us about solving the health care crisis. When I was majority leader, this is what I did with Thune's chart this morning. He had all these years that we passed CRs. We passed budget bills. We did. You know why? As leader, I sat down with the Republicans every one of those years and created a bipartisan bill. Their bill is partisan. They call it clean. We call it partisan. It has no Democratic input. Thune never talked to me. Johnson never talked to Hakeem. And now Thune is saying, well, the appropriators are working at it. As Patty will tell you, they are trying to work out some budget bills. But the two issues they couldn't decide were health care and rescissions, impoundment, pocket rescissions, and they all agreed the 4 leaders should decide that. And that's when we wrote Thune, and that's when we wrote Johnson, and they never even met with us. So that's why we were able to avoid shutdowns, because we did it in a bipartisan way. They are partisan totally, with no input from us. So, as Republicans continue to lie, distract, duck, hide, Democrats remain ready to get to work, negotiate a bipartisan agreement, and keep the government funded.
Well, the radical wing of the Democrat Party is demanding that Chuck Schumer shut down the government. If not, they'll be held to pay. We know that Chuck Schumer has had a war room going for the last couple of months to orchestrate the shutdown. That is their plan. So he comes up with this ransom note asking for $1 trillion to just keep the government open for 4 weeks. Republicans aren't going to buy that. President Trump's not going to sign it. There's a solution, and it's a simple, clean, continuing resolution to keep the government funded for the next 7 weeks as the appropriations committees work through the process. Democrats are pretty familiar with this. They've done it 13 times when Biden was in office, and the minimum number of votes they got was 65. But Chuck Schumer continues to bow down to that liberal wing, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. The American people should not suffer the costs and the consequences of a Schumer shutdown because he is politically toxic in his own party.
So yesterday, after weeks of waiting to see if the president would lead Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries go over to the White House, this is not a joke. People are literally standing on a health care cliff right now. For members of our caucus, when the Republicans, a whole bunch of them, didn't show up and vote last week, what did our people do? We went out and we met with the people in our state. We met with doctors and nurses. We went to rural hospitals. We talked to people that can barely hold on right now. This, what one farmer called a perfect storm of ugly. The tariffs are hitting them. The markets are drying up, and now they have their health care costs. So many of them, especially in rural areas, are on these individual plans. So what does the president do after this meeting? He posts that deep fake offensive video. This isn't a joke. This isn't political theater. He's so proud of the art of the deal, and it is his time to lead. He has said repeatedly, and you've all seen the real videos, where he said this is a time for a president to lead in the past. Well, this is his time to lead. When we talk to the people out there that aren't the ones on the Mar-a-Lago golf course, you hear what's really happening. They look at those grocery bills. They look at their electricity bills. Those things aren't deep fakes. Those things don't lie. Those things are real. So what are they facing? Healthcare cliff. 20 million Americans are set to see their premiums double when they pick a plan starting November 1st. And for those of you that ask, why are you doing this now? This isn't a December thing. This isn't a January thing. This is a now thing. This is happening right now. And the only way to fix this is to do something about it now. Those families don't know if they're going to have cancer research, and those researchers on Alzheimer's that are looking at going to other countries and looking at what's happening with NIH, this is a now thing. So I hope people remember that this is not a funny deep fake meme. This is not anything he says. And for those people in my state that voted for me and him, and there's a lot of them, they actually thought he'd bring costs down. That's what he said would happen on day one. Well, it is day 253. And people are paying more for their prescription drugs. They're paying more for their beef. They're paying more for their groceries. And they're paying more for their electricity. And they're sure paying more for their health care premiums. This is his moment to lead.
This entire shutdown is based on a ridiculous Republican lie. Speaker Johnson and Vice President Vance have pulled this out their hat. They're saying that the undocumented will be eligible for this. A flat-out lie. To weaponize the immigration issue in this critical crossroad and debate. So we're here to say to the American people, they are lying. They are the majority in the House of Representatives. They're the majority in the Senate. They're running the White House. And some would argue they may be even running the Supreme Court. They're controlling every aspect of government. This is their shutdown. This is not our shutdown. This is their shutdown. So we're here to fight.
American women cannot afford Trump. American women are not safe under Trump. And American women and their children and their loved ones may die because of the positions and the choices that Trump and Republicans are, because of the choices that Republicans and Trump are making about the health care of American women. And we are here to say we will not vote for your choices because there is a different way. We can have a funding bill that funds the government and at the same time cancel the costs, lower the costs, cancel the cuts, and save our health care.
This is not a game. And we understand this. It's your health care on the line. And we're here united in our commitment from every corner of this country, from every community, to say, Republicans, you have a responsibility to show up for your people. And the fact that you're not here tells us everything that we need to know about you. You are not serious people. You are not committed people. You are not people dedicated to the people who sent you here. And today we are here to say to all of those Americans who are afraid of losing your health care, we are standing with you. We are here to do the job. And I need you to pay attention to who's not here.
That's right.
Who's not here.
That's right.
The Administrator of the Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler, joins me now. Madam Administrator, great to have you. I know you don't want to shut down, but if there is one, and we're getting very close to it, what will you not be able to do tomorrow that you do today?
Well, thank you, Major. Look, what we can't do tomorrow that we're doing today is what we're doing at record levels, which was providing access to capital for Main Street businesses, small businesses that make up 99% of all businesses across America, to the tune of something like $160 million each and every week going out the door to small businesses that will stop to over 1,600 small businesses. So what does that mean? It means Main Street businesses won't get the funding that they thought they would get from their local lender to hire, to invest, to grow on Main Street. And that $860 million week after week, adds up to billions of dollars. And the SBA has set a record this year in SBA lending to the tune of $45 billion across small businesses across this country. And that's the economic heartbeat of our country.
The director of the Office of Management and Budget has said if there is a shutdown, there would be an opportunity to lay off permanently non-productive members of various agencies or those who don't support the Trump agenda. Does that mean anyone who works for you?
Well, look, we have the ability to do that under statute, under our regulatory authority in areas that aren't funded past the shutdown, which is today. The Schumer shutdown doesn't have to happen. Democrats have had every reasonable opportunity to get on board with this bipartisan legislation in the House and in the Senate to keep the government functioning for our military, for our farmers, for our small businesses, for families, working families who rely on nutrition assistance. We have to make sure that this government stays open to serve the American people. This short stopgap funding bill will get us through to November when we can have the broader conversation. But look, Democrats hate the president's agenda because it's winning, and they're resentful. They want to shut the government down to make the American people pay a price, and we think it's wrong.
You said you have the power to do this. Would anyone in your agency be let go for good if there is a shutdown?
Look, we have a program in place. If this were to happen, we hope it doesn't happen. We run this agency very lean for the support of taxpayers and small businesses. But to the extent that those programs no longer have funding, we may have to do that. And we'll look at that and take steps as needed.
Madam Administrator, I want to read to you something that came from the Chamber of Commerce's third quarter 2025 Small Business Index. It said inflation remains a top concern for 46% of small businesses. Many are raising prices, 55% according to that survey, or adjusting supply chains, 36%, to offset what they described to the surveyors as higher costs. Is that a problem?
Look, small business optimism is at record highs, at least since 2017. We see it at the U.S. Chamber data. We see it in NFIB data, above the 53-year optimism average. Small businesses' number one concern right now is access to skilled labor. That's because President Trump has solved inflation. He's cutting regulation. The largest working family small business Main Street tax cut in American history. We're establishing fair trade. Small businesses want to make sure the government's functioning so that they can serve their customers on Main Street. And this Schumer shutdown will hurt small businesses. It will hurt working families, hardworking military members, and farmers. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen because President Trump has gotten this economy back on the right track.
You mentioned farmers a couple of times, Administrator Loeffler. The president has indicated, at least rhetorically in the last week, that there may be the need for a farm bailout to offset some of the hardships imposed by tariffs. Those are his words, not mine. What do you know about that?
Well, look, I know that Secretary Rollins is working closely with President Trump. I know that fair trade is important to our farmers. I grew up on a farm. I know that rural America depends on fair trade. We haven't had that for a very long time. President Trump fought for it in his first term. He succeeded with it. He's going to do that again. And what I'm focused on is making sure that Main Street America is there for our rural communities, for our farmers, that the access to capital that they need is there. But the Schumer shutdowns threatens all of that. It threatens our farmers who rely on lending. It threatens small businesses who rely on it. And that's who President Trump supports, our small businesses, our farmers, and that's who Schumer is standing against.
Let me quantify the problem you raised a moment ago, Administrator Loeffler, about job openings. In that Chamber of Commerce survey, 34% of small businesses said they had unfilled job openings. 47% said they could not find qualified applicants. How do you solve that?
Well, we're working on that at the SBA. We've partnered with the Department of Labor, with Secretary Chavez DeRaymer. We're traveling across the country, going to trade schools, meeting with small businesses, ensuring that we hear from them firsthand where they could use additional support. Department of Labor has incredible grant programs. The Small Business Administration is under our MOU working together to ensure that small businesses have the workforce of the future. And we know that there are over 1 million open jobs in this country, and we're working hard to fill those for Main Street businesses who are ready to grow thanks to President Trump's tax cuts.
SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler. Administrator Loeffler, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Major.
You just heard the SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler say Democrats hate the Trump agenda and want to punish the American public with a shutdown as a result. Your reaction?
We want to support the American people, talk to people on the ground in communities across the country. Prices are going up across the country. They're slashing health care for millions of people across the country. People are angry. Trump promised to lower costs on day one in his administration, and yet through tariffs, the big ugly bill, costs have been going up. That's what you hear from people on the ground. We've got to make sure we're addressing the needs of our communities. And unfortunately, we've got a bunch of members of Congress on the Republican side who just are blindly loyal to Donald Trump.
How does shutting down the federal government solve any of the things you just described?
Now, what we need to do is make sure that we are supporting programs that help the American people. We're making sure that people have affordable, quality health care across the country, and we're keeping the government open. Something very achievable to do. Turns out the fiscal year always starts on October 1st, and yet Republicans waited forever to try to work on funding bills. We shouldn't be doing continuing resolutions. We should have passed full-year funding bills by now. Republicans are in charge of the House, the Senate, the White House. Didn't come to the table, waited last minute, and now they're not even in town. We have a shutdown. The House Republicans aren't even here. And so we need people who are going to come to the table and work to make sure we're putting the needs of the American people first, not folks who are on vacation and, I guess, are hoping for a shutdown.
In the last hour or so, Senate Majority Leader John Thune has indicated that if there is a shutdown, there'll be no negotiations with Democrats.
Does he want to serve the American people? Turns out that the American people want Congress to work. I think we've had Republicans in Congress.
Doesn't that alarm you and frighten you about the potential duration of a shutdown?
It alarms me that Republicans have abdicated their responsibility in Congress, have just been blindly loyal to Donald Trump. We need folks who are going to stand up, put the voices of their communities first. Healthcare is critical across the country. People want to make sure that there's affordable, quality healthcare. Republicans are ignoring that. And, you know, come to the table, sit down, count the votes. That's what it takes to pass legislation. That's always been true. They're uninterested in that. They're just trying to figure out kind of who they're going to blame and who they're going to hurt. In fact, if you listen to Russ Vought or the president,
Director of the Office of Management and Budget,
they've talked about the damage that they want to do, how they want to hurt the American people. They haven't talked about how we help folks. If there's a shutdown, they talk about the pain they want to inflict on the American people. We're fighting to help the American people, help families, and healthcare is obviously critical to that.
So some Democrats have said if there is an assurance from the White House that there will be good faith negotiations about Obamacare subsidies in the next 7 weeks, they might consider voting for a continuing resolution to keep the government open. Are you one of those?
I don't even know what that means. First of all, good faith. Have they been willing to negotiate on anything? They haven't been. They slashed health care for the American people in their big, ugly bill, slashed Medicaid, a $500 billion cut to Medicare as a result. And now we have the premium tax credits for the Affordable Care Act for people who buy their health care on the exchanges across the country. Those expire at the end of the year, but notices are going out in October. Rates are going up right away. I know in my state, open enrollment starts November 1st. We need to deal with this now. In our state, if the tax credits aren't renewed, premiums go up by 65%. The estimate is that 80,000 people will no longer be able to afford health care as a result. That's what we're talking about. And that's not something that's happening tomorrow or 7 weeks from now. That's something that people are grappling with right now. And November 1st, they're going to be choosing insurance.
You are convinced that this particular approach that has so far unified House and Senate Democrats will yield political benefits for you come
This is about doing the right thing for the American people. If you go and you talk to people, talk to folks what they want to see. They want to see the tax credits extended. They want to make sure there's affordable quality health care. They want to make sure their rural hospitals are going to stay open. We've already seen jobs cut at hospitals in our region as a result of the Republican policies that have been put in place. They want people who are standing up and fighting for the American people. This isn't just about blue districts. This impacts every district across the country, and Republicans are hearing it too. Republicans are heaing these stories, and yet they won't stand up.
How does this end?
Well, we need folks to come to the table. And
you need Republicans to capitulate.
We need Republicans to even show up. House Republicans aren't even here. We just had a session in the House. They weren't even there. The government will shut down tonight. They should be here fighting for policy to support their communities. and they can't even show up.
Washington Democratic Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, head of the DCCC. Thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate it.